السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. آه، معاكم الدكتور طارق صحصاح، مدرس الجراحة العامة MRCS. هنتكلم النهاردة في رابع محاضرة في suture like a surgeon. هنتكلم على techniques of suturing. أول حاجة نتكلم عليها simple interrupted suture، وديت أكتر حاجة بنستخدمها في emergency department عشان نقفل ال lacerations وال cut wounds. شوف دلوقتي فيديو ليها.
The first suture I want to teach you is a simple suture. Simple because there's really only one part to it. You're simply going to put the needle in on one side and then put it through on the other side. So it's important to hold the needle in the middle, enter at 90 degrees, exit, and then try to enter again so you can come into the tissue and come up at 90 degrees. Having it 90 degrees on both sides, when you tie it, will approximate the skin beautifully. So that's why I like to do it in two and not try to just run the needle all the way across. Do the instrument tie as I've already taught you and see how nicely the skin is approximated. And you'll see as you start doing this more and more, you'll just get faster and faster. It is an acquired skill. So the key, enter at 90 degrees. Sometimes you can keep it in, but you push the skin just to make sure you're getting through it at 90 degrees. And again, that's going to help you to reapproximate your skin. Now you'll decide how far apart each stitch needs to be. The closer they are together, the more stitching you're going to be doing and the more scar you may have. Some tissues are already just about approximated, so you don't need that many.
زي ما احنا شايفين هو دخل outside inside وبعد كده inside outside وبعد كده راح رابط. تمام. هنتكلم دلوقتي على السيمبل running switcher، ودي بنستخدمها اكتر في اللونج ووند ويكون في minimal wound tension. هنشوف فيديو ليها دلوقتي.
Look pretty, you get an incision, a closure to look pretty. So this is just a simple suture. You'll tie your first one with your instrument tie. Keep the length of your suture, long enough for the job, but not so long that your hands are going all over the place. And now what we're going to do is reload, and we're going to move along the same distance each time. And even though when we tie the stitch, it looks like it's closer to the skin, we need to enter the skin exactly the same place. So here it's just a few millimeters on each side. Move along the same distance, here a few millimeters, take the same distant bite on each side, and again, as you see, as you start to get better and better, you can just go faster and faster. And what's going to look nice is that you've done it exactly the same way each time. Now because we're going straight across underneath the skin, outside we're going to see a slanted suture like a baseball. We sometimes call this a baseball stitch. If you want to get really fancy, when you're passing your needle deep to the skin, if you pass it on a diagonal, your stitches will look like they're straight across. So there are different ways to do it and different ways on how you want it to look. This is a suture that
زي ما احنا شفنا هو اخد سيمبل سوشيال عادية في الاول، بعد كده فضل يكمل في اللونج ووند اللي هو بيخيطه، بعد كده ربط اخر غرزة في الغرزة اللي قبليها وبعد كده خلص. هناخد دلوقتي الفيرتيكال ماتريس. احنا بنستخدم اكتر على الامبورتنت ستراكشر اللي يكون فيها تنشن، خايفين الجرح يفتح. هنشوف دلوقتي فيديو ليها.
off this, sometimes a simple suture will just pull through, and we'll do a vertical mattress, which some people call the far, near. So notice I've gone into the skin, along the bottom of the skin, and gone far away, and now I turn the needle around and come back and do nearer and nearer to the incision. And what this does is going to pull the tissue between each of those throws together as opposed to just pulling the edges of the skin together. And again, you do your instrument tie, and generally I'll pull it tight just so I see the skin kissing. And this is a more secure closure because now what you're doing is you're actually grabbing a bunch of tissue and a bunch of tissue, and it's pulling the skin edges together, but there's no actual stitch in the actual edge of the skin. So again, deep, run along the bottom of the dermis, run along the bottom of the dermis and come out about the same distance on both sides, turn the needle around, and now you want to get pretty close to the edge of the skin because it's the distance between those two bites that gives you your strength. Do the same on both sides, and then again go ahead and do your instrument tie. So this is important when we are doing different types of deeper closures and certainly wounds that are traumatic and maybe have edema and are swollen and under a lot of tension.
زي ما احنا شايفين الفيرتيكال ماتريس هي فار نير. تمام. دلوقتي هناخد الهوريزونتال ماتريس وهي نفس الانديكيشن بتاعت الفيرتيكال ماتريس. هنشوف فيديو ليها دلوقتي.
And instead of tying this as a simple suture, turn your needle around, move the same distance you would for your simple suture, and enter it the same way, almost like you're doing a simple suture on the other side. So this is still a mattress suture because there's two different rows of suturing, but now instead of in a vertical line, it's in a horizontal line. And it's important that you pull together again only till the edges kiss each other. So it has the advantage of being faster than two simple sutures. And you know, sometimes in some situations you want to pull tissue to tissue together, just like with a vertical. Vertical is nicer because it does evert the skin edges, but in a case like this where eversion is not a problem, simply doing a horizontal mattress will help you. And sometimes in cosmetic surgery, we don't want any suture marks on one side. And when you come to the second side here, what you would do is take the first half of your simple and then just take simply a dermal bite on the opposite side and then come back and come through the skin again. And when you tie it down, it'll simply pull the dermis toward it. And we often do that in cosmetic surgery in areas of hair bearing. So this is good again for tension. It's good when the skin doesn't need inversion.
زي ما شفنا هي عبارة عن two simple sutures. تمام. دلوقتي هنشوف الفيجر اوف 8 suture بنستخدمها اكتر في لما يكون في bleeding. تمام. هنشوف لها فيديو دلوقتي.
Of the horizontal mattress is called a figure of 8 suture. We'll often use this in general surgery where we have big wounds that are gaping apart or fascia and we need strength. It's placed in the same way. We do simple suturing and simple suturing, except this time, rather than turning the needle around, we simply just move along and take another simple bite and simple bite. So same distance, same spread, except now, because we didn't turn the needle around, we have suture crossing in the middle. And as we tie it, you can see it looks like an 8. Hence the term figure of 8. And a figure of 8 is just as strong as a horizontal mattress would be, but it's faster. I would say cosmetically the scar would not be as good, so it's good for fascia in deep areas.
لو بصينا على الدياجرام دلوقتي هي الفيجر اوف 8 دي بطريقة مختلفة شوية عن اللي كانت في الفيديو. هي الفكرة بتخش من بره وتدخل جوه، وبعد كده هتخش من جوه لجوه. يعني ايه؟ يعني الناحية التانية هتخش تلف كده جوه وبعد كده تطلع لجوه تاني الناحية ديت وبعد كده تقوم طالع لبره، لكنها حرف 8 بالظبط. السبكوتيكولار سوتشر غرزة تجميل، مفيش جرح غرز باينة، الجرح كوزموتيك. هنشوف فيديو ليها.
Is run a stitch under the skin, and this can be done either with permanent suture or absorbable suture, and I'll demonstrate here with permanent suture. So I'll enter from outside and enter just at the level of the deep dermis. And the key here now is to take horizontal bites in that deep dermis, exactly the same on both sides, and advance as you go. And what you see is I'm pulling the suture across to show where the next stitch should be, so I make sure there's no bunching. But what you can find over time is that it really doesn't matter how much you advance as long as you're doing the same each time. I will tell you if you're hoping to pull this stitch out later, like maybe after a week, then you'd want to advance more each time. If you know it's a permanent suture that's going to stay in there, like something absorbable maybe, where you're not going to have to remove it, then you want to almost go back to the last stitch each time. So there are different variants, but the key is do the same thing each time. Now the skin is beautifully opposed. And on this I probably would still put steri strips or put some skin glue, but it's really the suture that's holding everything together.
هناخد دلوقتي حاجة اسمها البيرسيسترينج سوتشر ديت عشان نقفل لو في انتستاين ديفكت صغير. هي الفكرة كلها انت بتخش من بره لجوه، بره لجوه، بره لجوه، واول غرزة انت ابتديت منها بتوصلها تاني وتربطهم في بعض. الامبر سوتشر هي بنستخدمها عشان انفيرت ووند ايدجز في القط. هي الفكرة كلها بتخش من بره تطلع لبره وناحية تانية من بره لبره، وفي الاخر لما تربطهم في بعض الووند ايدجز نفسها تبقى انفيرتد لجوه. شكرا جزيلا.